Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain. I'm going to welcome you to this third episode in a six-part series on creating resilient supply chains through IT innovation, presented by Deloitte Consulting. Topic today is smart logistics and the future of freight. Now, there's no question about it. Freight is a competitive advantage and critical to the bottom line. So what can you do to optimize it? The answer lies in cutting-edge technology. And today, we're going to learn just what form that's taking to improve the movement and management of freight through smart logistics. With that, before I introduce my speaker, I do want to remind the audience that there will be an audience question and answer session at the end of this presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on that Q&A button at the top bottom of your screen. So now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. Chris Starks is a principal at Deloitte Consulting in his supply chain and digital networks practice. He leads large global supply chain programs to improve client performance, reduce cost, and avoid risk. He has experience leading engagements in the US, Europe, and Asia. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Starks. Chris, take it away.
Thank you, Bob. Again, Chris Starks, I'm principal in our supply chain practice. I focus on logistics and distribution. I serve clients across many different industries, including oil, gas, transportation, high tech, automotive, and agriculture. Here today to talk to you about smart logistics. And when I mention smart logistics, I'm really talking about all the new capabilities that combine the physical movement of freight with digital capabilities that are used to optimize, plan, and execute that movement. This includes discrete capabilities like the utilization of computer vision, new logistics platforms, and entrance into the logistics technology market, and really exciting capabilities such as autonomous trucking and autonomous and electric vehicles. And we'll talk about these solutions, how they're utilized, what's driving their use, the benefits and potential headwinds of their use. And I'll also show you some of the capabilities that Deloitte is building to help our clients utilize smart logistics to drive value and improve their logistics capabilities. We'll get into these capabilities in a moment, but I do want to start off by introducing some of the trends that are driving the significant change in logistics. And to do that, I'm going to take you through some of Deloitte's findings in our latest Future of Freight release. So to say it's been a wild few years for those of us working logistics and supply chain is a bit of an understatement. For those of you who are importing product from China and paying 10x per container what you were just a few years ago, and then we're dealing with port issues that were preventing you from even picking up your container while incurring detention charges, I have many clients who feel your pain. And for those of you who are trying to cover truckload freight in a spot market where you're paying 3x what your contracted rate was, we heard that too. And I have family members who come to me and said, boy, logistics must be a great thing to be in right now. Well, yeah, it's a great thing to be in logistics, but if you have a problem now and you're trying to fix it on the fly, it may be a little late for you and you just need to ride out the storm. And what we want to understand, however, is where is the market going and what capabilities can we put into place to mitigate significant potential changes coming to the world of logistics, and specifically what smart logistics capabilities can do to address these changes the fastest. And that's what I want to take you through in this session today. So we're going to go through that freight report. Then I'll get into the smart logistics platform. Then I want to talk about fleet transformation, which is really exciting right now. And then we'll have a discussion and Q&A section at the end. So I'm going to try to move forward here on the deck and get into the future of freight. All right, it's slowly coming up here. So just one moment. All right, so to better understand the freight landscape and its short-term shocks and longer-term transformation, Deloitte surveyed 315 executives of transportation companies in the United States and Europe with annual revenues ranging from 500 million to over 50 billion. And we also conducted a series of executive interviews for perspectives on the future of the broader industry. And so from a survey perspective, about 1/3 of the companies we surveyed were 3PLs. 15% were warehousing companies, and the remainder were a mix of truck, parcel, and rail transportation providers. And what we found reveals that the transportation industry is poised for significant transformation. And this transformation is going to present major challenges and opportunities for the transportation industry and shippers alike. So in terms of some of the key findings, we really saw that there's kind of three big things I want to talk about in this session today. One is the nearshoring of freight, or more specifically, changing the source of freight, which is going to put more demand on an already stressed domestic truck, rail, and parcel systems. The second one is going to be the birth of startups and cloud-based solutions to drive logistics transformation throughout smart logistics capabilities. And the third one here is really restructuring and utilizing the data to transform how freight is operated. And there's going to be others I'm going to cover in this upfront section, but as it relates to this, this is where smart logistics is really going to be key. So the first one is going to be nearshoring. So yes, this has been predicted for many years without much success. But given the macroeconomic and political conditions and new capabilities in robotics and automation, this trend is really starting to take shape. U.S. companies are expected to reshore nearly 350,000 jobs in 2022, and that was up from about 260,000 last year. And major automobile and electronic manufacturers are set to build new facilities costing billions of dollars to manufacture their highest value products in the United States. So like just investments in battery production alone in 2022 exceeded $13 billion. And so labor availability and the cost of manufacturing in Western Europe and the United States are being mitigated by the advance of robotics and automation. And that's what's helping stimulate the reshoring of manufacturing. And from a survey perspective, our respondents anticipate that a significant share of Asia originating freight is going to move onshore or nearshore to alleviate supply chain challenges and improve competitive positions. The problem is this is going to have a significant impact on logistics in the US. Rail traffic was already up around 10% over last year. Labor shortages and truck drivers were already bad, especially in the warehouse. And with new competition from manufacturing jobs, this is only going to get worse. And this is going to drive the need for better capabilities and automation within logistics. And transportation companies are responding to this. So Maersk, DHL, they're all adding new capabilities to handle it, and they're also changing their network. But shippers need to be ready for this too, and they need to be able to adjust for the network and add new capabilities to manage the shift. The next big trend we heard about in the future of freight is that leaders really feel that startups and cloud service providers are better prepared for meeting the challenges in the shifting world of logistics. Most transportation companies, especially ones that operate at significant scale, are used to like either building or acquiring the capabilities that they're going to need to effectively manage logistics. But new features of the future transportation landscape may require a new set of collaboration between legacy providers, legacy transportation companies, and startup or cloud providers. So 29% of the execs we interviewed said legacy logistics providers are best positioned to make progress in data optimization by 2030. But nearly 60% thought new entrants, so like retail giants, cloud service providers, they're going to emerge as the leaders in this environment because of the technology and changes in some public policy. And this isn't to say that shippers can't do well here and develop their own capabilities, but they're definitely going to have to scan the market and look at data and services to add, as well as new systems to really stay competitive. The next one I want to get into, and major trend we really see is this fleet transformation. And there are two key changes here. So I've been really focused at my time at Deloitte on automation, but EVs are going to be a game changer too in terms of how that impacts the logistics network. Due to emerging technology and public policy, transformation of fleets is happening, but it's not the primary driver for current strategic shifts in the movements of goods. The emergence of EVs as a viable platform for long haul really depends on one, powertrain availability and advancements in things like the electrical grid. But autonomous vehicles should really help alleviate things like driver shortages. But there's some challenge here, and that is still going to be years away from like complete use. And even when fully implemented, the transportation industry will likely make extensive use of driver-assisted vehicles rather than vehicles that are fully autonomous, whether it's parcel, courier, or express delivery, or long-haul transportation of consumer durables. What is changing in the near term is the adoption of thoughtful onboard tech, IoT, monitors of freight, smart systems ensure vehicle health, and tracking technology to even monitor the driver's health. And significant automation work is being done in that area, drayage, which is going to make that easier due to the port being close to warehouses near the port, and how we can do some autonomous moves from those two nodes. And so still companies are making investments there. We see investment about 35%, or 35% think there's going to be investment in EVs. Another 45% think automation by 2030. And then when we ask like what's going to have the greatest impact, it's really going to be around that drayage move as well as some of that middle mile moves. And then lastly, kind of the interesting thing here was that around 92% of the respondents thought this disruption is going to have a major impact on who is going to be the transportation company. Many, like 32% thought that the OEMs are going to be moving into a fleet management role, and 60% said that's going to be inevitable, meaning if you're developing the autonomous truck, you're going to actually be the driver, so to speak, of that truck as well. You're going to be the transportation company. That's going to be a major shift. Moving on to just roles and capabilities and how technology is going to take over here. Kind of core logistics capabilities has always been focused around like sourcing, transportation planning, scheduling, warehouse management, order fulfillments. And these things are probably going to continue on. Those capabilities likely aren't going anywhere. But with a lot of pressure on margins and changes into the scope of the work that's actually happening due to the capabilities that exist, we are going to see some significant changes here. Back office capabilities are likely the most susceptible to change, but with new software as a service platforms and control tower solutions that are out there, maintaining in-house capabilities to do this may be quite burdensome over time, and a lot of the shippers and transportation companies are looking for partners to support that. And so transportation leaders, they've already begun divesting kind of lower value activities to focus more on like critical areas of expertise. And our research shows that 60% of the respondents plan to outsource more of their non-core capabilities, where 59% want to add through acquisition new capabilities to align to the current environment. The next one, unlocking value from data. The big thing here is that transportation companies are really focusing on using their data as a source of revenue. So they believe that they can provide their clients, their shippers, a lot of value through the data that they're collecting. And there are companies out there that are already doing this that aren't like say 3PLs or transportation companies, but that's becoming something where transportation companies really feel like they can add a lot of value and start increasing revenue. And so we'll talk about that in the smart logistics section coming up in one moment. And then the last piece I want to get into on the future of freight is really focused around public and private collaboration. Now, this is not the most significant thing when it comes to, say, technologies like TMS solutions, control towers, IoT, et cetera. But when you start moving into, say, autonomous freight or electronic vehicles, that's where the public and private collaboration is really going to be important. And what we're seeing is that this doesn't just happen at the federal level, it needs to happen down at the state level, because state governments are going to have a say over how autonomous, for example, gets adopted. And the federal government is going to have a big say in how they fund things like electronic vehicles. So, a lot of exciting things from the future of freight. And what we're going to do now is transition into what that means from a smart logistics perspective. So addressing the trends from smart logistics. So given that you heard about what's happening in the future of freight perspective, I do want to take some time to go through and showcase what we're seeing as this relates to the new technology that's coming on board. So I'll take you through some of the new systems and capabilities of those systems that we see that are more impacting the legacy applications. The second one is IoT and computer vision. A lot of new use cases are starting to come on board with IoT and computer vision. Optimizing data. So one is identifying the data that you do have and making that a service, and then what do you do with it? And that ties into the next one here, which is third-party insights, and meaning what kind of data can we get from third parties as a shipper to improve our logistics operations? Last one is control towers. I'll touch on that for a moment, and then I'll hit on outsourcing. And then the next section after this is going to get into the exciting stuff around autonomous trucks. So to begin, I went too far, sorry. I want to talk about the systems and capabilities that we see and the new things that are out there. So what I've got on here now starts off with the traditional TMS platforms. Okay, so you see things like SAP TM, Oracle Transportation Management, Blue Yonder, Manhattan, et cetera. These are the traditional TMS players. There's also very many niche solutions out there as well, like Vesa Nautical for bulk maritime, Bork for rail. These solutions do a great job of managing transportation. However, they did have some gaps, and not gaps because they didn't code in functionality. It's, hey, you can manage transportation, you can optimize transportation, but if you don't have good visibility data, you have a gap in how you manage your transportation network. And then you had solutions such as P44, RailLink, Marine Traffic come on board, and they were there to fit that gap. They were providing visibility that they were collecting from the trucking companies, rail companies, maritime companies, and using that to pass to the TMS solutions to increase their utilization. And then you had solutions such as control tower solutions and analytics solutions, so Air and LlamaSoft that do a couple things. One is, from a LlamaSoft perspective, obviously that's about optimizing your overall network. And from an Air perspective, it's tying in insights and helping automate not just transportation, but other areas of the supply chain all at once, and providing kind of capabilities across, say, functions within supply chain. And so these solutions did a good job of, and they're getting pieced together to drive benefit. But what we were hearing from our clients is that they wanted more. And that brings us to some of the new things that we're seeing right now. And this is where we get into what we call, from a Deloitte perspective, smart logistics. And what you're seeing here is a smart marine solution. Now, these solutions are cloud-based solutions. They're built on things like ServiceNow, Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, that take these TMS capabilities, visibility solutions, and analytics solutions, and combine them into a nice front-end platform that takes advantage of the capabilities of, say, a Salesforce or a ServiceNow or a Dynamics, which really makes it a collaborative environment that's workflow focused, and can connect multiple areas of not just within your supply chain, but across your organization and even to your partners and suppliers as well. And so the nice thing about these tools is you can customize them. They're low code, they're easy to build, and they've got a lot of different functionality that the TMS solutions did not have. So I'm going to switch to the next page. One thing that's really nice about these is just the front end and the UI UX experience that allows end users to interact with the physical movement of freight that really wasn't there in previous systems. And so what you're seeing on the screen here is our rail solution that allows you to see at a map level, for example, on the right of a rail yard, to see all the different cars and where they are in real time, and then even move them around and showcase how to move them where they want to go in the rail yard, and have those directions sent down immediately to switchers in the yard. And on the left-hand side is more of just a map showing kind of the movement of rail cars throughout the network, but again, in a way that wasn't really there from like an ease of use and a nice front-end experience for an end user. And that's something we were able to build. And this doesn't replace these TMS solutions. What it does is it enhances them. So it works together with them. And that's what we're seeing a lot of our clients want to go to with these capabilities. The next thing is the reason we're using things like ServiceNow and Salesforce is they've got these out-of-the-box capabilities that users in the organization and outside the organization are already used to. So, for example, you're able to do things like take advantage of task management and workflow management, which is a really important piece of managing complex logistics that the TMS providers really didn't do. I mean, they were focused on automation and optimization. And that worked really well if you're planning a lot of truck shipments or a lot of parcel shipments. But when you get into more complex modes that require communication and collaboration across multiple parties inside and outside of your organization, having like a task management solution, document management solution, as well as kind of a workflow that drives that behind the scenes, that's really important for our clients. And that's why we're building these things out. The next piece I'll get into from a smart logistics perspective is IoT, computer vision. So a lot of work is being done with computer vision. There's things from safety to like security that's being utilized at yards and manufacturing facilities and logistics areas. But the focus that we're looking at right now are things like tracking rail cars with computer vision, monitoring activities at a port and doing a better job with things like detention and demurrage, and then even just at a truck level, doing things like managing the wait time at a plant. And so these capabilities before required somebody to go in and enter events or to collect events from a carrier, but with computer vision, you can actually do a better job of just managing that on your own. And so show this quick video here. It's a little slow, and so I may try to jump ahead, but what we've done is set up computer vision to read the trailer ID, the tractor ID as a truck entered a facility. And that's what you're seeing right here. And then it can, take that, integrate that with the yard management solution, help identify where that truck and container need to go, monitor how long it's been there, as well as from a security perspective, track the movement across the entire plant. Across the entire yard. So it can identify, hey, truck 1, 2, 3, it's at this location. Truck 4, 5, 6 is moving somewhere else. We can track the speed. We can also say, okay, this has been there X amount of time, therefore let's start the detention, and even send alerts to say, hey, this thing's been there too long. Let's try to get it out of there so we can avoid detention. So I'm going to skip ahead just in the interest of time. We've also done this from a rail perspective. And in this case, what we're doing is showcasing, I don't have a video here because the file size was too large, but what you're actually seeing is a screenshot of a video of a rail car is going across an intersection. And what our computer vision models do is it hones in on the ID of the rail car. It detects the location of the ID. And then it even says, look, let me assess let me assess how accurate that is, so the confidence level. So it says, okay, we're at 98% that this is, car SHQX, 8342. And that information is then sent to our smart rail systems to do all the things we need to do from a tracking perspective, from an ETA perspective, et cetera. And before, this was done by sensors on a rail car, but we found that using visibility gives you more flexibility about where you can detect cars, as well as give you a broader view of, say, your plant or your rail plant to understand where cars are throughout the location. One other use case we're using for IoT and computer vision has to do with at a port detecting which containers are getting pulled into customs. And then so instead of just relying on the port to tell us what got pulled into customs, we're able to use the computer vision to identify the ones that actually got pulled, how long they've been there, when they're going to get out. And then we use that information to notify the parties that are involved in those containers to let them know, okay, here's when you should expect your container, here's when you need to send the truck in, et cetera. So doing a lot of stuff that you could do before with manual entry, but it was missed a lot of times. And that's what computer vision does, is it reduces the miss rate that you'd have with a human trying to track this stuff. Some other things with IoT computer vision. One is just adding a lot of sensors and capabilities to trucks, whether it be from, measuring temperature in the truck, trailer location, speed, fuel, and location monitoring, even tire pressure, security from a door and loading status perspective. So trucking companies are taking advantage of this and then passing that information into the cloud that can be used by, again, the P44s out there, also passed to your transportation systems. And taking that a step further, we're putting GPS and cellular connectivity on rail cars as well as containers that do the same. And even going as far as adding these capabilities to pallets. So you've got a high value product, you want to measure the pallet that it's on. There's pallets that have cellular capabilities. The pallets are about $20 more than the non-cellular enabled pallet. So there's definitely a use case and business case to use these pallets to better understand where your product is throughout the supply chain. So moving on to, I'm stuck here, data. So one of the other things that we've been talking about is companies wanting to use data to sell as a service and productize their own data. So when we did that survey for Future of Freight, we did say that 78% of those transportation companies plan to productize their own data. And so 47% want to provide insights to partners as a value add, so just an additional service. 30% are actually trying to monetize that data by creating actual products. And then 41% are looking to expand and improve their existing suite of data products. So this is a big focus area for these transportation companies. And what they're seeing is competition from upstarts. So on the next page, there is a lot of competition here. And that's where solutions such as P44 come in, where they're capturing that data from the transportation companies. They're going beyond just providing transactional transportation data. They're looking at, hey, let's look at port congestion, and let's look at potential delays, and let's get weather data and pull that in and sell that information back to shippers to help them make better decisions about how they route their freight. And then take that into the third-party data that you're able to get. The big thing in transportation these days is visibility data. Mentioned a couple firms or a couple software companies that provide this. Project 44 and 4Kites are the ones that provide that more transactional transportation data, although they, like I mentioned, they've expanded into providing kind of more broader visibility with things like port congestion. E2Open does it a little bit differently. They're connecting to all the different trading partners out there and providing that platform of visibility. But these solutions are really closing the gap from where things were 5 years ago, where you had 75, 80% of the data. Now they're getting closer to that 90, 95 range. And that's what's driving the acquisition of these tools, as well as the utilization of that data to be successful. And so, for example, in a smart logistics platform that we're thinking of, like from ServiceNow or Salesforce, we're using information from RailLink, Marine Traffic, Project 44, RadarBox to pass that information into our platform, and then even pass that into things like the TMS solutions that are attached to this platform. And so that's where you get this holistic view of your transportation network and where things are, and then using that to help optimize and route transportation more effectively. Hit control towers relatively quickly in the interest of time, but like logistics control towers, that's another big focus area right now, and that's really moving beyond just optimizing and executing freight. Control towers connect other parts of the supply chain and leverage what a transportation management system does, but helps one, automate the processes, automate the touch points in between, say, planning and logistics or procurement and logistics. And that drives additional value that wasn't there with just a TMS alone. And so you see some of the benefits that control towers are going to drive. But when we think about what a control tower actually does, maybe we go to the next page and give an example, one that we run and operate. We do this for a major automotive OEM. And what we're doing is we're connecting the suppliers, the supplier locations, the logistics carriers, the manufacturing plant, and then soon on the outbound side as well, going to customers. And we're connecting all these different points and understanding, not just the transportation management of shipments coming in, but hey, does a supplier have product ready? Have they released it yet? Is it ready to be picked up? What's going on there? How do we get visibility to that? Then we built this on a ServiceNow platform that one helps monitor all that and provides nice user experience and good visibility of the solution. But secondly, it creates tickets and it says, okay, we've got an actual issue here. Let's go solve this, and assigns a customer service representative. Hey, there's a problem at the supplier. Go work it, and then make sure that ticket's been resolved and doesn't get forgotten about. So it provides that visibility, but then it also provides the actions to help solve the problems, and it helps coordinate across all the suppliers and carriers and nodes on the transportation network as well. So again, another solution that gets added on to your traditional TMS or WMS capability. And then last piece, I just want to hit on quickly, the outsourcing logistics operations. Debate whether calling this really smart logistics, but when you think about adding smart logistics capabilities and the tools that are required to do this, the question comes up is, what solution should you manage yourself versus what should you outsource? And one thing we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years is that a lot of the 4PLs that we utilize or 3PLs we utilize have the same labor challenges as shippers have. And so saying, hey, I'm having trouble with some staffing, things like that, I'm going to pass it to 3PL, that always doesn't work. And so the real question is, how do you have an operating model and how do you have the technology that works for you? And to me, this is more of something that's more introspective that you need to ask yourself. Look at what capabilities you can implement, what is going to be important to have in-house versus what you should pass to someone else. And the nice thing is these platform as a service, these control tower solutions are helping make outsourcing a little bit easier, as well as allowing you to own your data, optimize your data, and make those kind of key decisions that you want to make versus having to rely on a third party who may not have perfect information trying to make them for you. So that's really the wrap on the first part of the smart logistics piece. I am going to now just spend about 5 minutes going on fleet transformation. So 2 things here. One is we did as part of that future of freight, we did ask about the adoption for electric vehicles. No surprise there. I mean, the big focus is cost savings. I think second one, it kind of comes into company image, but obviously sustainability is going to be a big part of that. Now, the challenge around EVs, as I mentioned before, is that, where electric cars are, they have a range of, say 250 to 500 miles. It's a much more difficult situation for an 18-wheeler to go to EV because they're obviously oftentimes going way farther than 500 miles. So they need to go 1,500 miles and it takes a while to charge. So it requires a significant infrastructure change to really enable the 18-wheeler fleet to go full EV. What I'm more interested in is really the autonomous vehicles. And again, same sort of thing to apply here is that the main focus for autonomous vehicles are cost savings. Executives view that as the primary driver there. But there's also some other features of autonomous vehicles that not everybody thinks about. And that's where we get into what's the true impact of autonomous vehicles. Well, there's no surprise, if you're able to take the driver out, you're going to be able to save a significant amount. So what we see is about a 30% reduction in cost per mile. So no driver, better fuel efficiency, et cetera. The big one here is that it's also quicker. I mean, with the driver, obviously there's driver hour rules. They need to stop and sleep, of course, where that's not necessarily the case for autonomous vehicles. And so theoretically, you can run these more on a 24/7 basis as opposed to sticking to the hours that are required by law today. And another piece here that we're going to see an impact is that there's not going to be this proliferation of different autonomous vehicles. There's probably going to be very few winners in terms of developing these solutions. So you're going to see fleet consolidation due to these high technical barriers of entry, and that's going to shift profit pools to those AV fleets. So where is this going to come first? Well, that's always a big question. It comes, there's several kind of factors that go into there, but we really view the Southwest as where this is first going to apply. And the primary reason for that is lack of population and weather. So that's going to make it safer to test out, no weather challenges to really deal with, and that's where it's being tested. And so we've already seen, autonomous runs that are happening there. And then you'll see that transition out to the regions as we expand beyond that. And there's a question is, how should you prepare now? My advice is from a shipper perspective, you should take more of a wait and see approach. However, if you're in the business of supporting, say, the trucking industry, that's where you need to really focus down and say, okay, what's this going to look like in 3 years, 6 years, 10 years? So if you're a service station, for example, you need to think about how this is going to impact you. And so what we've done, let me switch to the next one here. We've put together a model based off our best guess of where autonomous is coming first. And so as you can see, these are the lanes that we believe autonomous is going to, and you can see by year when we think this is going to happen. And again, starting in the Southwest, moving kind of towards East and California, better weather locations, and then expanding throughout the country as we get out to 2040. That's when we think, full adoption may be possible. Now, this, there's some challenges around this. Let me go back to the previous slide here, excuse me. Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainties around this. One is regulatory approval by state. How do they handle weather? So for example, I was in Colorado last year and started to snow and, in the mountains, and all of a sudden all the trucks pulled over and put on chains. That's kind of tough to do with autonomous truck. But, all these things that are going to go into like adding to uncertainty around whether this is going to be adopted fully. But we're excited about it. And we think this is, this is the game changer in domestic transportation. Couple more slides here. And this is just where we think, what this is going to impact from a trucking perspective on their revenue. And if you think about the U.S. domestic trucking fleet, the revenue there is about $700 billion. We think about $350 billion by 2040 will flow through autonomous trucks. So we're very excited about that, very bullish about that, and look forward to seeing how the technology progresses. So that wraps up the session. I think Bob, over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chris, for that great presentation about the future of freight. A lot of good information there. I want to move now into the panel discussion portion of our presentation, Chris, if you don't mind taking a few questions as a thought leader on this topic. Starting with this. Where do you currently see the most activity in terms of what you've listed under smart logistics capabilities? Yeah, absolutely. There's really, say, three areas we see a lot of action right now. One is that the IoT computer vision. It's relatively low cost to get a lot of value. It's discrete. You can add in some capabilities, integrate that into your logistics systems, and it's the replacement in terms of FTEs that were doing that kind of work provides a lot of value. The second one is control towers. Control towers are being utilized. There's a lot of different software companies that are providing these capabilities, and it's going not just in logistics, but across supply chain overall. And the third one is that those platforms that I mentioned, using the tools like ServiceNow and Salesforce, et cetera, we're seeing a lot of companies that are already using those technologies expand that into logistics and get a lot of value from it. So those are the three key areas. Why are we seeing that, by the way? Why are ServiceNow, Microdynamics, and Salesforce now being used for logistics? What was the trigger that made that happen?
Well, my opinion is one is it started being adopted by organizations. They had that tool set. Two, ServiceNow and Salesforce, they identified this as an area of opportunity for that particular tool. And three, you just had the scale of users who knew how to develop on those capabilities and knew on those tools, and said, hey, I can, I've programmed this, and this over in sales. Well, I can take this into logistics. And so it's been really exciting for me. And I guess the fourth one would be folks like using it. The adoption rate's high. It's easy to use. It's intuitive. And so that's the other piece that's driving the adoption.
Yeah. Of course, the whole ball game is visibility, logistics visibility. I wonder what are some of the biggest challenges around that topic right now, achieving it?
Yeah. So the one that's really always been the problem for me was, 20 years ago when we started implementing transportation management systems, you would have to rely on EDI from trucking companies to get visibility. And what that would require is somebody sitting there at the trucking company would interface with their driver and say, okay, I've dropped off at this time. I have to go enter that information in. So at that time, you could really kind of yell at your carriers and say, hey, put this stuff in, you may get 50% compliance. Then you saw like P44 and Four Kites come on board and start working with the different trucking companies to get them onboarded on their solution. And so, 5 or 6 years ago when they first started, they were getting about, say 80% hit rates, et cetera. So 80% visibility to me is still not very good. You've got a lot of gaps you've got to deal with. But they've gotten so many folks on board now, and they've got so many different modes and so many geographies. You're really getting into that 90, 95, 97%. And that's where visibility is great. And secondly, what they've done is they've invested heavily in AI and ML, however they want to call it. So to really say, okay, look, I didn't get events here, but I know that 95% of the time they actually do enter that and they shipped on time. And here's what we've seen. So we can even be somewhat predictive to say, hey, they actually were successful here. And that closes the gap and makes it a lot easier for a shipper to say, hey, I feel confident, or I feel there's a risk. And therefore, this tool provides me a lot of value.
You did a great job, Chris, of kind of plotting the prospective rollout of autonomous vehicles across the country in the years to come. And you made it seem kind of smooth and progressive. And I'm just wondering, are there factors, or what are the factors that might kind of provide a hitch in that growth? What's preventing the full adoption of autonomous vehicles, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, number one is, will the technology get to where it needs to get to be fully autonomous? And if you talk to the developers of the solutions, they say yes. But we don't necessarily know. The second one to me would be security. And obviously these companies are investing a lot in security, but just imagine someone hacks like say the network of trucks and shuts down the network of transportation for a weekend. I mean, that's a significant issue that's going to affect a lot of people. And so how do you mitigate that? And three is just, this is really big. It's just the comfort level. I mean, if you're driving down the road and you look over and there's an 18-wheeler there with nobody in it, you feel good, and that's going to impact policy, right? And so those are the three things that I typically see as a concern. Just me thinking about it, as opposed to like kind of an official stance by the government or OEMs.
If I could broaden that question to kind of embrace the whole topic of smart logistics, what makes achieving that whole smart logistics universe so challenging?
To me, the achieving everything is just the complexity around it. And not just the complexity of you've got solutions and you're putting them in place, but how do you pick the right solution? How do you know it's going to be there for the long haul? How do you know you're going to get the value out of it that you need? And so the thing that is driving that now is that these platforms like the ServiceNows and and Salesforce, et cetera, are making that a lot easier, right? So one is the complexity has gone down. Two, the solutions like P44, et cetera, they're providing that full set of data that you need. And so they're solving that challenge and that gap. And then, some of the advanced capabilities like IoT, et cetera, people are starting to see, hey, these are actually working really well, and I'm able to onboard them quickly. And so you start piecing those together, you start telling a nice story, and you've got, say, the buildup of stories of saying, hey, here's how this worked, and it's doing everything we thought. That's what's going to drive more folks adopting these capabilities.
You think that all these innovations you've been talking about today, Chris, do you think that going forward, they might actually serve to reduce or eliminate the kind of congestion we have seen in the last couple of years at ports that might not happen again if these systems are in place?
I wish I could say yes to that, Bob. The worry I have is, I guess my view on this was you had a demand increase for products coming from overseas. Your port can only handle so much volume going through it. It is also going to take investment in port infrastructure to resolve those sort of issues. But if you get back to normal, like what we saw in 2019, and you have just normal growth from that, I do think these smart logistics capabilities are going to help take out some of the kind of the slack that was in there. You can operate more efficiently, so you can do more with less. So absolutely yes. But if it kind of has one of these, say 20% increase in demand, you're going to need more than smart logistics. You're going to need extra capacity.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Chris. I think I'd like to bring in the audience at this point. We have just a few more minutes, and I want to get to audience questions and answers. We do have some audience questions already to answer, but even as we are answering them, audience members are encouraged to continue to submit those questions by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many of them as we can, time permitting. This question is about the pace of development and adoption of EVs, and the question is against the backdrop of what has been the impact of raw material shortages for things like batteries, lithium, and cobalt on the development and growth of EVs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big study in the EV piece in terms of the supply, but I can tell you that doing work in the semiconductor industry, that is a significant issue. That's obviously slowed us down. But I really do think that it's not something where we would have a lot more EVs out there right now if that weren't an issue. I really think when I talk to different shippers and then they have their own fleet, they're like, gosh, we'd love to do this, but our network doesn't support or isn't built for the current capabilities of EV right now. Now, others are saying, look, I mean, in 2030, it's going to be EVs, and it's going to be perhaps even mandated it's going to be more EVs. And therefore, we need to think about what our network is. And hopefully that gives them enough time to sort out some of the supply situations that will, I mean, if you were at scale, that would definitely hurt a lot of the folks that are trying to adopt more of those capabilities.
Thank you. Questioner wants to know, how do 3PLs and 4PLs evolve throughout these process? What's going to be their role going forward in terms of what services and technology that they adopt, and what they give the marketplace?
Well, that's the going back to that future of freight study. There is a real view that those new companies, a lot of them are acting as 4PLs and saying, hey, look, I'm a 4PL founded by technology, and so we're going to come at this with a better technology stack, and we're going to be the one that has all these things connected that's going to work really well, that we can onboard you quickly and start driving value as opposed to having to add people to do it. So more automation, more connectivity, and a better value prop through that. And so to me, the ones that do that really well, they're the ones who are going to win. Whereas the ones that were just saying, look, I've got a good relationship, I'm on site at these manufacturing facilities, we've been doing this for 20 years. At some point, I think they're going to be in trouble if they don't adopt these new capabilities.
What is the business case for placing sensors on rail cars?
That's a tough question. Some rail cars, especially when they're moving hazardous products, significantly hazardous products, require that you have GPS solution and GPS capabilities on rail cars. We've done some studies around things like hopper cars, et cetera, and putting GPS on there, and business case wasn't there. And therefore, that's why we feel there's heavy value in some of the computer vision capabilities that I mentioned. And also, I don't think you're going to see anything going away in terms of the sensors that are already on the car, like the passive tags that go by, the readers every 80 miles. I don't think that's going to go away. But what we're trying to do with computer vision is say, okay, at a rail yard, instead of having a sensor on every car and saying, okay, that's where the position of the thing is, let's use computer vision to scan the full yard, identify where all the cars are. And then that allows you to have, a better view of visibility as opposed to trying to use GPS, which, again, like you're spending a lot of money, not just installing it, but then changing batteries and going out and trying to get on top of the cars. It's not an easy thing to do.
You mentioned that these systems integrate with ERP and traditional transportation management systems. Are there, in fact, any issues, though, still with integration of all the different systems that have to play nicely together to make all this work?
My view on it has been on the ERP side has been more difficult than say the TMS side of things. TMS solutions seem to be better in terms of the integrations. Now, obviously, there's integration platforms that are making this a little bit easier as well, but I always felt like the TMS solutions did a pretty good job there. I do think that the reason why you see a lot of these Salesforce and ServiceNow solutions is because before the TMS would get visibility information into it, but only people who are in like logistics could really see it. And maybe you could pass emails and text or whatever to them from that. But folks wanted visibility across the organization. So up to customer service, out to even customers and suppliers, et cetera. These tools allow you to do that in a much easier way without having to build complex integrations. And that's why you're seeing it go down that path.
Any visibility system depends on the quality of the data that's inputted into it. Are there any issues with obtaining that data being submitted by all the different players in the transportation supply chain, or is that pretty much cured?
No, it's not cured. That's a great question. And that's one of the challenges that goes along with this. And that's why these visibility platforms are spending a lot of time and a lot of money and have teams that are focused on improving that situation as you go. And that's why I think companies are going to these visibility platforms. Before, you'd have somebody in logistics trying to track down all the visibility information. Well, it's a lot of work. It has a lot of different touch points, and therefore having these platforms that are doing that for you, and that's their value prop. That to me means that things are going to get cleaner over time. And it's especially when you add things like computer vision, and the less manual touches, the better off we're going to be, and the better our data is going to be.
Thank you. What moves are the private sector companies making these days to build a strategy around infrastructure involving EVs or autonomous vehicles?
Yeah, the big one that I've recently seen has to do with automotive companies that when they think about where their new plants are going to be, so say like a battery plant or a truck plant or whatever it is, they're thinking, hey, look, we want to have electronic vehicles also serve those plants. And so they're thinking, okay, how do we need to set up basically the infrastructure at the plant to allow charging? How do we think about how far we're going to be from suppliers and make sure that they're going to actually be able to drive the distance on a single charge? And so that's one piece. The second one is, let's say distributors. Distributors are looking at their network, looking at where their warehouses need to be to serve their customers, and say if they want to go EV, they need to be in a place where they can get out to their customers and back, typically on a single charge. And so it's going to impact, to me, one, the network that they're operating in, and then two, infrastructure around their network to allow these, allow the charging stations to happen. And then they've got to work with public because, it's not like you just put up a power plant to serve a bunch of trucks. I mean, you've got to have the capacity and behind that. It's not just building a service station, the charging station for like your Tesla. It's a much more, it's a bigger endeavor to charge a bunch of 18-wheelers.
This questioner wants to know, says, what really is smart logistics? Beyond a marketing buzz term, what does it really mean for the market? And I guess, what does it mean to be smart?
I think they got it right the first time. It's a marketing term. Many clients like to use that. Not clients, many consulting companies like to use that. But to me, it really is how you connect the physical transportation world with the digital world in a way that improves the situation, optimizes freight, provides additional visibility, and utilizes things like computer vision, and onto all the way up to like autonomous trucks. So yeah, you're right. It's marketing. It sounds great, but we're excited about it and it's real.
Is it essential that AI be part of that?
I struggle with AI a little bit being a part of it. It depends on what that really means. Now, if you're basically saying, hey, look, we're going to ingest all this data and we're going to have tools that are going to understand what that data means better than say somebody who's doing analytics in a spreadsheet. Absolutely. But I think you can get pretty far along without having something super advanced like AI. Now, autonomous trucks, that's where, call it AI. I mean, that's the key there is like, how do they ingest all that information to make sure they're safe? They can handle different weather conditions, et cetera. So absolutely for the autonomous world.
Great. We are just about out of time, Chris. We have time for one final question, and here it is. What is preventing companies from moving forward with smart logistics capabilities?
I think there's two things. One is the just the complexity that's out there, and the second one is the confidence. Right. So from a complexity standpoint, it's again, how do you manage all these different things that are happening? What's real? What's not? Wow, I've got 10 different systems I've got to connect to, and I've got to build these capabilities, and I want to pull in this data. How do I do it? And the other one is really, I guess the cost of that or the value. But the nice thing is we're seeing and presenting out now, like, okay, here's how you reduce the complexity. And here's the value that you're going to get, proven value statements that other clients have gotten. We combine those two things. We think we have a great story to tell and a great way to drive this forward.
Well, Chris Starks of Deloitte, thank you so much for that very detailed, very information-packed presentation about smart logistics and the future of freight. This, as I said, has been the third episode in a six-part series on creating resilient supply chains through IT innovation. Get ready for episode 4. It will be on supply chain resilience and risk management, a top post-pandemic priority, coming in February 2023. Keep your eye out for that. And thank you once again, Chris, for that great presentation. Audience, thank you so much for your attendance and for your great questions. Everybody, happy holidays, stay well, have a great day.
Thanks for having me.